Hello and welcome. You're watching UATV News with me, Ksenia Buhai. First, this hour, the latest developments from Ukraine. Flags flown half-mast and all the entertainment events cancelled. The city of Kharkiv mourns for the victims of fire in the retirement house. President of Ukraine has also arrived to Kharkiv. The head of state has early initiated the inspections at all the retirement homes and rehabilitation centers in Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelenskyy emphasized that the issue of functioning of those institutions has to be settled at the highest level.
First of all, I want to express my condolences to Kharkiv residents, and certainly the task was to be put. We have to find all such objects in Ukraine now to avoid the tragic moments like this one when 15 people died in future.
The investigators have three versions of the causes of fire in Kharkiv. According to Prosecutor General of Ukraine, they are considering arson, careless handling of electrical appliances, as well as short circuit. 4 suspects were detained, namely owner of the building, the tenant and his wife, and the administrator of the retirement home. According to the Prosecutor General, the owners did not have documents and special permits to connect the building to electricity and gas supply. The detained man owns 2 buildings located on a single land plot. During the first priority investigative actions, the law enforcement revealed the so-called rehabilitation center for persons suffering from alcohol and drug addiction functioning in the second building, officially owned by the man. The exact number of the patients and reasons for their stay in this center are being established. To remind, on January 21st, a retirement home caught fire in Kharkiv suburbs. According to law enforcement, 15 persons died and 11 got injuries. The investigation of the causes of fire and search for perpetrators continues. On January 22nd, Ukraine marks the Unity Day. This holiday symbolizes unity for all the Ukrainian lands and plays a significant role in the history of our country. Our correspondent will tell you about the history of the holiday and its traditions.
To be united and protect an independent Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy congratulated Ukrainians on Unity Day and recalled historical lessons that should not be forgotten. The head of state expressed confidence in the return of the occupied Crimea and the temporarily uncontrolled Donbas. Unfortunately, we are united by not only happy but also tragic pages. Every day, especially today, we should unite, support each other, stand shoulder to shoulder. We protect our Ukraine and we will be united in joy and in grief. And let the waters of the beautiful Dnipro River be the only thing that separates us. The act of reunification of the Ukrainian People's Republic and the West Ukrainian People's Republic, which had previously been parts of the Russian and Austro-Hungarian empires respectively, was proclaimed on January 22nd, 1919. Another significant for Ukraine event took place a year earlier. When we talk about January 22nd, we should understand that it is not only a day of unity and unification within one state, of Ukrainian People's Republic and the West Ukrainian People's Republic, but we should also mention the events that took place the year before. On January 22nd, 1918, the Ukrainian Central Council declared independence with its 4th universal. January 22nd is the day of Ukraine's first independence, as well as the day of unity. The act of reunification was not accidental. It was not easy to achieve it, historians say. Both politicians and ordinary citizens wanted to unite the Ukrainian lands into a single state in order to recreate public solidarity and a political nation. It is important from different points of view. It's important for national awareness, for the unification of Ukraine. Because the Day of Unity is not only history of Kyiv and Lviv. This is the history of the entire Ukraine, and it is the embodiment of the aspirations of Ukrainians in different parts of the country. Therefore, it is extremely important to support Ukrainian statehood and to unite the Ukrainian nation. At present, the Day of Unity of Ukraine is one of the most important holidays of our country. It symbolizes the unity of the Ukrainian lands, and it reminds of the price Ukrainians paid for unity a century ago. This is really important because, as we see, the formation of the united Ukraine even now is not just a case that happened somehow. but a struggle of our ancestors. And therefore we must remember it and appreciate everything we have now, everything achieved by many generations that lived in Ukraine. This holiday has another significant tradition, the living chains formed by people from different cities and towns. For the first time, this event took place on January the 22nd, 1990, on the 71st anniversary of the Reunification Act. Then, more than 1 million people holding hands formed an unbroken chain from Kyiv to Lviv. This year, due to quarantine restrictions, a similar flash mob went online. More than 27,000 people took part in it. The online chain was over 1,000 kilometers long. It stretched from Sofisky Square in Kyiv to Taras Shevchenko Park in the city of Simferopol. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Vlada Tsurkan, UATV News.
January 22nd also marks another sad anniversary. On this day, 7 years ago, the first protesters, Serhiy Nihoyan and Mikhail Zhizhnevsky, were killed during the Euromaidan protests in the center of Kyiv. This was the beginning of the violent confrontation between the riot police and pro-European activists at the Independence Square in the capital of Ukraine, which later in February of 2014 resulted in more than 100 deaths of protesters after clashes with the police and unknown killers. The names of those guilty of murders during the 2014 protests in Kyiv are still unknown. The investigation continues. The OSCE calls on the participants of the Trilateral Contact Group on peaceful settling the situation in eastern Ukraine to mutual respect. Special representative of the OSCE chairperson in office in Ukraine and in the group, Heidi Grau, called on participants in the negotiations to stop blaming each other. Ambassador stressed that parties should abstain from destructive statements about the course of negotiations. She also noted that despite some alarming trends, the ceasefire regime announced on July 27th last year is generally observed in Donbass. I urge all the participants in the Trilateral Contact Group meetings to demonstrate responsibility in this context. An important element is to refrain from unfounded mutual accusations as well as destructive and unreliable statements about the course of negotiations in the media. I urge all participants of the Trilateral Contact Group meeting to demonstrate the political will to swiftly reach an agreement on the mutual release and exchange of detainees based on the principle all for all, starting with all confirmed for all confirmed. The Ministry of Health notes the positive effect of the strict quarantine introduced by the government a couple of weeks ago. There are more Ukrainians who recovered from COVID-19 than those who has contracted coronavirus. Over the past day, 5,384 COVID cases were registered across the country, while 14,239 citizens got well.
All the measures taken affect the current situation in terms of morbidity, the number of severe cases, and the number of patients admitted to hospitals. The number of people who have fallen ill with COVID-19 is declining daily. We have managed to certainly stabilize the situation.
Privatization, investment attraction and stock market development. The strategy of national economic development was discussed at the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. According to Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, the working group has identified the top 30 vectors of work in this direction. The government plans to create favorable conditions for investments and for recovery of the Ukrainian economy. One of the nearest plans is the recreation of a national stock market already this year.
As for the development of the stock market, it is really very important. We have prepared a corresponding memorandum on the creation of such market, and I hope already next week we will sign it. We have already elaborated a timeline of the process, though this process is an uneasy one, but it has to be started sooner or later.
MPs plan to study the draft law on transformation of the Ukroboronprom state defense concern already at the next plenary week. Members of the National Security and Defense Parliamentary Committee have unanimously recommended to approve the draft in the first reading. The document foresees transformation of the state concern into a number of joint stock companies. The state would own 100% of their shares. The transfer to corporate governance is set to provide new opportunities for international cooperation, while the creation of supervisory boards would make the company's work more transparent, officials say.
Having appointed me Director General of the concerned President of Ukraine has put me a clear task, namely to transform the Ukroboronprom into a group of modern, effective, transparent and corruption-free holdings, which would perform their task to cover the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine as well as expand their presence on foreign markets. All this is foreseen by the draft law. In fact, the document is base for reformation and transforming of the Ukroboronprom.
Fight Like a Girl, online media aimed against violence, has been launched in Ukraine. This is a guide to counter sexual violence, bullying and cyberbullying. There are self-defense and legal literacy lessons as well. All videos are posted on Facebook and YouTube pages. According to the initiators of the project, cases of domestic violence have increased by half in Ukraine over the past 6 months. The project was implemented with the support of the European Union and the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. It's an online project for women. This is directly the target audience. Indirectly, we want to involve both boys and men in the problem of combating domestic violence and in general in the culture of combating violence in Ukraine. We have developed a chatbot called CyberDog for educational purposes and to provide assistance when a child cannot or does not want to share something with parents or feel some misunderstandings with the teacher and so on. He or she can contact the cyberbox. It's anonymous. We made sure we talk about cyberbullying and what to do when you suffer from it, how to complain or delete content. They give warmth and even improve the immunity. That's what simple hugs can do. On January 21st, many countries of the world celebrated the Hugging Day. It was invented in 1986 by American students. As time went by, the holiday became relatively popular abroad as well. Are hugs that useful? Do Ukrainians avoid them during quarantine? Our correspondent found out.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, when people have to maintain social distancing, hugging has become a real luxury.
Meeting your dearest and friends, one needs to keep social distance. It is difficult indeed because when we hug, we have a certain feeling of comfort, care, and now we are strongly lacking this.
Only very close people, relatives, people in love, and those who have a pet usually express their tender feelings in public. Ilona is lucky. Her pet Timon is a big hug lover.
Hugging 24 hours a day, that's a peculiarity of a breed. It may seem aggressive, but it's actually very friendly.
Usefulness of hugs is scientifically proven. They strengthen one's immunity, stimulate the central nervous system, and increase the level of hemoglobin and oxytocin in blood. This hormone improves one's mood and lifts spirits. At present, when there's a lot of aggression everywhere, hugs bring us a sense of security, a sense of comfort. This is a tactile sensation that we feel at the moment of hugs. It brings pleasant emotions, as if returning a person to childhood. Over the past year, because of the pandemic, Ukrainians have learned to express feelings at a distance. I don't think that I need hugging right now, but a warm look is really great. Even handshakes are normal. You can do it with your legs, fists, whatever you like.
We hug in our minds, speak more tender words, laugh with our eyes, smile and say that we love.
Reported by Vadim Kramer and Olena Diduch, UATV News.
That was our final story at this hour. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. More updates on our official website, YouTube and Facebook pages.